Well, hello and welcome. This is video number 6 in an 11-part series on the French Revolution and Napoleon. And in today's video, we're going to focus on France becoming a republic and then the very strange period that follows closely after, known as the Reign of Terror. So with that, we'll get started. All right, so where we left off in the previous video, France had evolved into a limited constitutional monarchy. France had also, during that same stretch of time, gone to war with neighboring countries and then began to have problems within, concerned that people might be trying to revive the monarchy in its original form. And so that led some of the more radical-minded revolutionaries to believe that France needed to do away with anything to do with the monarchy and become a full-on republic. So timeline-wise, we're talking about the early fall of 1792, and a decision is made to effectively dissolve the original National Assembly and create what was called the National Convention. And it's ultimately from this National Convention that the decision is reached for France to become a republic. Basically, what that was going to mean moving forward is, at least in theory, in France, the governing structure was going to be such that there were no connections to the past monarchy. There were no positions that a person would hold simply because of who they were, that it was going to be an environment where all adult males could vote. In theory, anyone from that category could hold office, and that they would make decisions that way. Now, exactly what structure that might take was still to be determined, but at least in theory, they were going to shift to a republic and try to put a republic into practice. This officially took place on September 21st, 1792. So really the only question at this point is, what would France look like as a republic? Now, before France could really get there, they did have one little piece of business that they still needed to take care of, and that was what to do with the French king. Because the French king was still around, the French king was still alive, and if you were going to be a true republic, you definitely couldn't have the king around. There was not a position for him, I suppose, unless he was chosen by the people to be the ruler. But they certainly were not going to leave that to chance. And so charges were issued against the king, charges of treason, basically, working against the country of France, aiding enemies, that type of thing. And I think hopefully it's obvious he was going to be found guilty of those charges. And the penalty in France at this time for treason was death. And so he was put to death. And one of the devices that was used is a device that will become commonly used, especially in the next stretch of time, the guillotine. You can see the picture on the screen up there if you're not familiar with the guillotine. Basically a device whereby a person is laid down on a board, their head goes through a little hole where it can make a break, I guess, between where their head is and the rest of their body is, and then a long, heavy blade will be dropped and go down through that area where your neck would be and chops off your head. Very effective device for making a person no longer alive. At any rate, he was found guilty. He was sentenced to death, and on January 21st of 1793, so very early in 1793, the king was executed, and France really did have an opportunity to move forward as a republic, a true republic at that point in time. Now, it may or may not be surprising that things got maybe even weirder once France became a republic. Just as a quick review, as late as the summer of 1789, France was an absolute monarchy. Revolution begins. They transition to a limited constitutional monarchy where the king still existed and still had some legitimate power, but a lot of it was in the hands of the legislative assembly. Now things have transitioned yet again to a full-on republic, so basically the opposite of the absolute monarchy that they had before. And once that time presented itself, there were some of the more radical-minded people that really saw the opportunity to try to shape France into the country that they really wanted it to be and felt that it should be. And so a person that we'll focus on with this Reign of Terror period is a person named Maximillian Robespierre. He was a part of the Jacobin faction, one of the many different factions that existed within the original legislative assembly. And if you wanted to state what his goal was for France overall, was to create what he described as a republic of virtue. And what that meant in practical terms is he wanted to have a France moving forward that had no connections whatsoever with the monarchy of the past. And so he began really pushing for steps to be taken to move France in that direction. Now, just to give you some examples of the degree to which he was interested in doing away with any past connections to the monarchy, obviously there were big picture things like not having a king anymore and removing people who were in positions of nobility who maybe had some kind of a role to play simply because of their family or something like that. Those types of things were eliminated. But even the smallest details were addressed to try to create no connection whatsoever with the past that related in any way, shape, or form to the monarchy, and in some ways probably in ways that didn't even seem to connect to that. So examples, if you look on the screen here, on the left-hand side, a calendar. A new calendar was created. They took Sundays out, basically simply 30 days a month. They changed the names of the months. They changed the names of the days. The weeks had 10 days in them, so 3 10-day weeks. So no connection to keeping track of the time or anything like that. Even things like decks of playing cards that had suits like kings and queens. They changed those to have different suits, ones that did not connect in any way, shape, or form to the monarchy. Churches in general were closed as kind of archaic connections to a past that was no longer relevant. So pretty much all the way through, inside and out, up and down through French society, changes were expected to make this break with the past. Now, as it would turn out, as time went by, Robespierre gained power and authority to make decisions in France. He would end up, for a time at least, being a part of a group of 12 that were referred to as the Committee of Public Safety. And basically what their role was to see to it that the people of France had kind of shed off their past and were properly supporting the move to being a true republic. And where things get kind of scary during this time is they had no tolerance for people that they perceived as not being fully on board with the program. Basically, if you were deemed to be an enemy of the revolution, you would be put on trial and very likely executed soon thereafter. And the kind of people that found themselves in this position were people who challenged him. He had no tolerance for anybody who had a different point of view or was interested in something that was different than what he was interested in. So you either fully supported what he was about or you were an enemy. And then there were also people that found themselves in this position because they were not demonstrating that they were supportive enough of republic. It may have been that they were truly supportive of what was going on, but they weren't clearly supportive enough. An example I kind of think about would be somebody who's a fan of a sports team, whether it's your college team, whether it's a pro team, that just being a fan, just attending the games, and even wearing the team shirt would not be viewed as enough. That you were only a true fan if you attended the game and you wore the shirt and you painted your face and you had the foam finger number 1 and got really ridiculous about it. So even people that were genuinely supportive of republic came under fire. And numbers will vary on how many people are estimated to have been killed by being determined to be an enemy of revolution. But at a minimum, at least 40,000 people were killed this way. And in reality, there were likely many of them were fully supportive of republic and some of the things that were going on, but not in Robespierre's eyes. Now, where things will turn for him gets into July of 1794. As time went by, more and more people close to Robespierre ended up suffering the fate of being deemed an enemy of the Republic. And basically it gets to a point where members of the National Convention recognized that there was no one that was safe in France anymore with Robespierre ruling things the way that he was. And he will end up being executed himself, thus ultimately bringing about an end to the Reign of Terror period. Now, just timeline-wise, his execution will take place on July 28 of 1794. So he had really a good year's worth plus of a run of being a very strong influence in France, but unfortunately a little bit on the crazy side. And so with this Republic time seeming to kind of go off the rails, we're ready for yet another shift in government for France, and that will be the subject of the next video in this series. I hope you found this video helpful and informative. Thanks for joining me, and thanks for watching.